Hey, welcome to my studio. I'm going to be sharing a Tuesday tip. Post-editing Tuesday here. I apologize for the audio you are about to receive in this video. I live in Kansas, y'all. I've got chickens and I've got wind, and you hear them both. Please enjoy. I want you to take notice of the sky. You notice how what's closest right here is darker, and as you go back, it's lighter. I also want you to pay attention to the clouds. There's a game I like to play with my kids. I ask the kids, how many colors do you see? And we played it just 2 days ago, and my son was almost right. He's doing really good. Beginning artists like to put a lot of white in their clouds, and you can clearly see that there is white, right? But what is white is going to be the brightest color. Just like black is going to be the blackest color, so that's what's going to pull your eye first. And see, the sun just came out, so everything's lit up a little bit more. But if you notice, the sky didn't change color. Whenever you are warming a painting with sunshine, you're not changing the color of your sky or your clouds. And I can go into more detail about that in another video. Right now, I want to focus on the clouds. How many colors do you see? Now, if we're just looking at the clouds, there are 6 colors in the clouds right now. Let's count them. So, right here, and these spots right here are going to be your darkest. So that's what you would shadow with either a light gray, not a black, because if you add black, you would have to make sure you have plenty of white. Almost make a gray first and then shade, which shade means to darken your color. So that's one. There is a shade between right here. If you can see, if my camera is picking it up, there is a slightly lighter gray, and there's actually 4 different hues of gray in these clouds right now. And then you have what would be considered off-white right up here, and then your whitest white is going to be right there. That would be the whitest white right now. Now, with that in mind, as you're looking at this video, I want you to see if you can tell the 4 different hues of grays. And I also want you to take a second to point out these different whitest white spots. Those are going to be what catches your eye first. It is going to be the lightest part, and typically that is where the sun is shining through the most. I want you to take a look at the sky from this angle. I am probably about 95 degrees from the sun right now, so it's not directly above me, but it is just off to the side above me. The wind is blowing really hard, so the clouds are moving really quickly, but regardless of that, you can still see where the sun is coming through right here, and that is your brightest whites, is where that sun is coming through the clouds. What's happening is with these darker clouds, it's all part of the same cloud system, right? But why that is darker is and more opaque is because they are probably denser and there's more of them stacked on top of each other, whereas that would be thinner and more wispy. Oh, sorry, this would be thinner and more wispy. If you were going to paint that, what you would do is start with your darkest colors first. And pretty typically, whenever I am doing color analysis out in whatever I'm trying to get a color analysis out as, you count how many colors there are, take note of the different colors, because there's about 4 different hues of gray just right here. And what you do is you start with your darkest gray first. Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. You start with your darkest shade first and add your light. Now, when you add your white, that needs to be the very last one, because you don't want to color over your white. You want your white to be on top so that their other colors don't muddy your clean, clear white. And as you can see, where the sun is poking through, it's going to be right where that white is at. So as you're painting this, not only are you thinking about how to set your colors, starting with your darks and working towards your lightest, also be thinking about your hand gestures. Some clouds would be more of a this gesture. Some clouds are more of a this gesture. Honestly, just depends on how you want your clouds to look, because depending on the type of brush you use, you could even just dab, and that would work too. For these clouds, if I were going to paint this, I would dab my darkest colors, dab my lightest colors, and then slowly, gently on the edges do a soft swirl with a dry brush that has the paint on it, and then go in with a very fine, thin little brush to outline and just put in that white. I want to take this moment to encourage you to take a second and subscribe to my channel, and don't forget to hit that notification icon so that you don't miss an episode if you'd like to learn more about art tips and writing tips. Okay, let's get back in it. Hey, welcome back to my channel. I've got some color here that we are going to be using for our clouds today. So as you can see from these colors here, we have some already pre-mixed grays, blues, purple, some yellow, and an orange. We've also got our white and our black. I personally prefer golden artist colors. Pigment is really rich, and as you're making a stroke, it tends to keep the color the entire time. Whereas I've noticed with other brands, they don't keep the stroke very clean. But this is a very affordable option because a pack of over 50, I believe, was not very much money at all. Whereas these two colors alone, I think, cost me the same as a pack of colors from Arteza. So let's get started here. Also, I want to quickly point out that if you're looking at the color wheel, I plan on showing you how clouds sometimes show other colors other than the typical gray and white that you might see in clouds. First, I'm going to go through and just squeeze out as much as I think I'm going to need. If you've seen my other, might need a little bit more of that one. If you've seen any of my other videos, a few episodes ago, I showcased what I prefer to mix my colors on, which is my industrial glass. And then I also, the following episode, showed a cheaper alternative, which is these plastic cutting boards. Where I was going with that is clearly you can see some color residue that no matter how much scraping I did, it's just kind of stained and isn't going to come off. I try to give plenty of space between my colors. Sometimes when I know that I'm going to be mixing color specifically and not just using the color that's coming straight out of the tube, I will make 2 glob spots of the same paint, because I will use one glob spot to use the color and the other for the mixing. Talk about in my other video how color that's left on your palette can sometimes affect the color that you see here because of the color surrounding it. Let's go into a little bit of color theory with that. I've got some colors are pretty bright And I love bright colors. It makes for a very vibrant painting. But I would like to point out, shading really helps your painting feel real. I'm going to start out with 3. I might need a little bit more because I have a really big piece of paper. When you need to lighten a color, it is considered tinting. When you are making a color darker, it is shading. And I don't always recommend shading with black. For the sake of making grays today, I'm going to be showing you how to do that with black, because obviously the opposite of white is black, just like how the opposite of purple is yellow. So let's get all of our color ready so that it's already mixed and ready to go, so that when we get painting, we don't have to worry too much about mixing. It's already done for us. So let's get a little bit of black off to the side here. Just real quickly, I am going to go through and add acrylic flow release. I'm also going to go ahead and add some retarder. Retarder in art just means this drying time is lowered. And it really doesn't take too much. It might have looked like I put really big globs on it, but once you get it all mixed together, it blends in really well. And honestly, this giant container is going to last me years. This would be the darker side of our grays. I want to point out that the acrylic flow release also going to thin out. Acrylics don't like water, so you can't just add water to thin out a paint. We're going to need some blues for the sky. We're going to use a little bit of purple in our clouds, and we're also going to be using a little bit of yellow in our clouds as well. Of course, the clouds are going to be differing shades from the brightest white to this dark gray. It will not be so dark as black. Black is too stark for the sky and cloud. I'm going to need to mix up some colors that are between this color and my whitest white. Now, whenever I've studied clouds and analyzed color, I typically only find about 6 in the clouds itself with the white and shades of gray. There are times where I've found 8 colors in the clouds, not including the sky, but they have been other colors. I'm talking about the grayscale of clouds. I typically only find about 4. If we use this whitest white for our highlights, and this is our darkest gray, and we've got a blue gray here and a darker gray here, which I am going to lighten just a little bit. You can see I almost perfectly color matched that, but I want some variation. That's kind of a small jump. Between here and here is a bigger jump. Between here and here is a smaller jump. So I think I'm going to add some more white to this because I don't need it quite that light and I don't need it quite that dark, because this dark is going to come in handy when we are adding the darkest part. The acrylic flow release is going to help me be able to drag this color better and keep its color. And the retarder is going to allow me to work a little bit longer with this color, with all these colors, without drying out. Okay, I think that's good. I think that's a good range. What we really need to do is add a little bit of this white to probably every one of these colors. So I am going to add these globs of white. All right, let's get into the fun part. Now, if you've ever looked at a sky, heck, if you're near a window right now, go ahead and peek out if it's daytime. You'll notice that what's closest to you is the darkest. What's farther away is the lightest. So we are going to treat this as if this is all sky. There's no gray, or there's no grass. This is sky. Whoops. All right. So we're going to pretend all of this is sky. Now, when you're looking at the sky, what's closest to you is darkest. What's farthest away is lighter. But that doesn't mean that right here, because it's closest to our body, is what's closer. Okay, let me show you. Let me just get this color down and I'll start explaining. So we're going to get this color down here. I'm not using a canvas today. I'm using literally some paper. So it's coming up on me a little bit. It keeps moving. Sorry. No, I'm just using a really wide brush here because it helps me get the color down a lot faster than a small brush. And it was dry. Okay, I'm going to have to do something about it popping up on me. There we go. Much better. Got some paint on the back. Oh, I'm a mess today, y'all. Okay. Let's get this going. There are so many different cloud types and so many color combinations of clouds that you can make. I've seen clouds that have had pink and purple and blue in the clouds because of the light coming from the setting sun, bouncing off of the sky, reflecting all these beautiful colors. What I'm going to show you today is just 3 different styles of making your clouds. There are, I'm sure, way more than just 3. These are just the 3 that I'm going to show. I'm not saying that these are the best. I'm not saying these are necessarily my favorite, but for the sake of the length of the video and how big my canvas is, we're going to get 3 in today. Okay, I fixed my camera so that you can adequately see everything that I'm doing. First way I'm going to show you, I'm going to be using a really bristly brush. We're going to start out with this quadrant right here, and I'm going to be using a really stiff, dry brush. My darkest color here. And remember, all of this is sky, so we can put cloud wherever we want. The sky, whenever you're looking at it, what's closest to you relatively when you're looking at the sky, what's darkest is closest to you. What is farthest away is lighter. But with clouds, that's not necessarily the case. So you don't have to, at least what I've found, it hasn't been the case. You don't have to make sure that it's darkest up here with the cloud and lightest down here. The sky and the clouds are 2 separate entities that have their own color analysis functioning side by side together, but there's no correlation. We're just gonna do dab with a dry brush, because as you're dabbing, you notice we're getting softer. So the more I dab right here, the more it gets that color out. It distributes it. So when you do one dab, see how it's just kind of the shape of the brush. You continue to do it and you pull the color around it. So I'm just doing one little dab, not getting too terribly much. I'm not loading the brush up. I'm just getting the tips. I make them really dark right here. I keep losing bristles. This is a cheap brush. I also want to add some dark ones right here because I think the contrast is interesting. This goes back to color theory and what I said about colors next to each other kind of change the look of the color. You can tell I'm using the same gray, and if it's showing up on camera, because of the darker blue here, makes this gray seem darker, whereas this light blue lightens this. And it's not necessarily that the lighter blue is showing through, so it's lightening it up. That's part of it, but part of it is the surrounding color. And that fascinates me so much. So this technique, I'm just dabbing. Now you start with your darkest color and you add up. Now I'm not worried about wiping off this brush before adding more. I'm just going to dab where I want it to be lighter. You could be thinking about your light source. So where is the sun right now? I haven't painted the sun, but when you're doing your painting, think about where you want the sun. Is it going to be over here, in the middle? Depending on where it's coming from, if it was in the middle, the light would be coming out. It radiates out this way. If the sun was over here, then it's going to be coming this way because light is directional. So if you had the sun over here, then wherever the light was coming through on the cloud would be lighter. So you would lighten that cloud because of it. Now I'm going to add some of this gray, lighter gray, into this dark because you can see there are shadows in the clouds that we made just by adding the lighter color on top. That's what's really fun about painting detail in a how do I want to say that? Painting detail without having to go in and actually draw out where you want your shadows. You just put the darkest color down. And as you add your other colors, you have inadvertently created a shadow. I'm going to go back in and add a little bit more here because I want to play with it down here. Now I'm going to get this lightest one. And again, still sticking with the dabbing. To help with the realism of it, put your dabs strategically. If you see, I'm just putting these lighter dabs right around here. I'm not doing all of it. I'm putting the lighter dabs in very specific spots. So this kind of gives the effect that these darker clouds are a little bit farther away, and these lighter dabs, these lighter clouds, are closer. Now I'm just going to play with this a little bit and get a little bit of white. Oh, picked up a little blue from my, that's okay. Have you ever seen kind of a stormy sky where it feels like the clouds are all just on you? They are on top of you. That was kind of the effect I was going here. So there we have it. Next, we're going to come over here. I'm going to get rid of this brush, and I'm going to get a wide, smooth brush. In this panel, I'm going to show you how to make them look far away. So how I'm doing this with my brush, you see how loose I have? I'm not firm. I'm loosely, I've got it. You're telling the brush, I want this paint right here, but you're giving the brush a little bit of freedom to play. So if I'm doing this in slow motion for you, I'm putting the color down and I'm slowly moving like this while moving side to side. Do you see how that works? Side to side in a circular motion. That's going to make those clouds wispy. They're going to make them longer and thinner because clouds in the distance are really thin. And this is where I'm going to have a little bit of fun with this purple here. Just going to get a little bit, and I'm going to rub it right here, because if I were to just get a bunch of this purple paint and put it on, it would glob up right there. I'm wanting to soften the color a little bit and add it right here. Boop, 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 boop. Not too much. Not too much. A little bit of this, I almost said purple, a little bit of this orange. And I'm just going to lightly put it in as well. Trust the process. A little bit more of that purple right there. Now I'm going to get this gray. And that's coming That's a little green for me. Probably need to go ahead and clean off this brush. This. Okay. And might get a little bit of this loaded up here. Yeah, there we go. And I just right over top like that. Smooth it out. Kind of streak it out right there a little bit. Got a little bit down here so there's some consistency. Okay. Now, again, I'm still being really streaky here. I'm not wanting to necessarily cover up all of my blue here. So as you can see here, as the paint has loaded up, it's created these little sections in my brush. So as I'm painting, you see these streaks. I'm going to go back in here with the slider. Here is I'm still doing a streaky approach, but I'm going up like that instead of side to side, because that's where we started, was doing the side to side. Now I've got some color back here. And now I'm adding where I want a little bit of shadow. I'm playing with it a little bit. Playing with where I want the shadows. I'm putting my brightest white straight on it and just mixing it in. Because remember, your brightest white is where the sun is going to be coming through and the brightest part of your clouds. When I first started painting clouds, I would just put my white up there. And it didn't quite look right to me. And I took a long time of messing with it and studying the clouds. I don't want to completely cover my blue. So I'm dragging it. So I just put a little bit of color down and I'm dragging it. The idea is that they're really wispy. These aren't big stormy clouds, and they're not fluffy white clouds either. Now, me being a perfectionist and me analyzing myself, I'm thinking, I really don't like all of this stringiness. So that's where I'll come in with another dry brush, but this one is rounder and softer. Just kind of smooth those lines. Because even though I've added retarder, this is still drying fairly quickly. Just kind of smooth those lines out just a little bit. Now, this last one, I am going to do those big fluffy clouds, and I'm also going to demonstrate how to add highlights in a more defined way. All right, let's get to it. I'm not going to have very much of my dark. So, if everything is brightly colored, it's hard to tell where the highlight is. And I know clouds can seem very daunting. But the fun thing about clouds is that they change so much because the wind currents up there are always pushing them around. And you might not like how I've painted these clouds today. And that's okay. Use some techniques that I've showed you and go paint clouds that you can be proud of, that you like. I certainly wouldn't want you to think that my clouds are the end all be all. There are so many fabulous artists out there who even specialize in painting just clouds. It's what you're passionate about. I like clouds, so I've spent years studying them and painting them. For you, if you want to learn how to paint clouds, because it's a necessary evil when you're painting a sky, just remember to have fun with it. I know it can seem daunting, but I think it's honestly way more difficult to mess up a cloud than to get it right. You're like 99% more likely to get a cloud right than you are a cloud wrong. So I'm still using this dry brush technique where I am just softly rubbing on the color. A technique that some people use that I'll quickly demonstrate is if you get your color, you put it out like this, right? And then you drag it back. You drag it back and you fluff it as you go. I don't think that style works best with the clouds that I'm painting here today, but that is certainly one way to paint clouds, is by adding your color and then dragging it back. I like clouds to look a little bit more abstract, where they look soft and fluffy, but aren't too defined. That's a way to paint a cloud and make it look defined. And if you're interested in me doing a part 2 of this and showing you more cloud types and colors and styles of how to paint them, comment below. Let me know. Okay, we're going to play a quick game right quick. Based off everything you've seen so far and everything I've said, can you guess where the light source is coming from? Even though I haven't painted a sky or painted a sun, where do you think the light source is coming from with this panel? If you guessed right about here, you'd be right. If you did, well done. Okay, let me show you how to do some detail. So I ended up not even using this yellow today. That's okay. But I am going to take some of the retarder and flow release from right here and get this loaded up here. See if I can take some from this one too. It dripped a little because I want it to drag really easy. I want it. So this, out of all the little mixings that I added as I went, I saved this part right here. This is purely white, and I am going to need to add some acrylic flow release to that. It stopped up a little bit on one side, so I'll squeeze it, wanting a little bit to come out, and then it finally breaks through the dry levee part of the opening and then squirts out a whole bunch. There we go. I need this nice and loose. Nice and loose. Okay. Just rolling it because I don't want a ton of paint stuck on the side. I want my brush loaded up, but I want it all near the tip. All my animals are coming to talk today. So, assuming the light source is coming from right about here, and it's coming out this way and radiating this way, we're going to have some highlights right there. You know what? I think I accidentally got a little bit of gray with that. I'm going to have to start over. Get brand new white. That's okay. Okay. The brightest white right here. Coming through right there. And then smooth it out that way. Right. Smooth it out. Which one do you like better? Let me know in the comments below. Hey, thanks so much for being here in my studio. Really hope that encourages you to get out and start painting clouds. They're not too difficult, I promise. Just have fun with it. If you do paint some clouds, send them to me. I'd love to see them. Until next time, bye-bye.